Hey everybody, how you guys doing out there? It's kind of hazy and cloudy right now, just like it had been in Hollywood the last few days when I've been out there attending Cinegear, where exactly at noon it just clears away and it's noon. So, Cinegear. Am I going to talk about gear? No, not really. I mean, I saw a bunch of cool things, but there's a couple other websites that do a really great job covering this, so why should I do the same? That's silly. But let's talk about people and let's talk about work, because that was a big part of the reason that I went out there. I wanted to reconnect and see some folks that I had not seen because I've skipped NAB for a bunch of years. And the reason that I've been skipping NAB, besides falling attendance with fewer people, although in some ways that was good because you got to talk to some folks much easier without the crowds, but there have been certain vendors who have been dropping off and not showing up. And just the cost. Vegas has gotten silly expensive for my experience when I priced it out. It was like double. I'm like, this is just getting crazy. So I said no. I said, let's do something else. There are other shows that you can go to. So I'd wanted to go to Cinegear, so I went. And it was great because I saw a lot of the same people, at least from California, the West Coast. I had a couple of great amazing random meetings, like my sales guy from Able Cine turned out to be this guy I'd never met that I started randomly talking in line, waiting to get in. And about 20 minutes in, we finally figured it out. So that was fun. And there were a bunch of times that happened where I knew people through email and we were just randomly chatting, and then they flipped their name tag around or something like, hey, I know you. So that was good. That was a lot of fun. That was something that certainly happens at NAB, but when you've got 50, 60,000 people, down from 100,000 a couple of years ago, it's harder to do, although it still has happened, but just far, far less frequently. Now, speaking of conversations, maybe the most interesting conversation that I had was with a couple of UCLA graduates. They had just graduated, and they were as concerned about the state of the industry as, of course, are all of us folks who've been in it for a while, who've made a living for a decade or two or three. And it was a very interesting conversation to have because they caught the tail end of COVID during their school experience the first 2 years. So a lot of the internships and industry introductions that typically happen when you go to UCLA, because you're in the middle of Hollywood, didn't happen. And they felt very cheated out of having been denied those introductory positions, jobs, and contacts that you would normally get that really help people get their careers started in that town. So they were very frustrated, and they were asking me, well, how do you feel? Where are you coming from? Should I be looking at jobs in mid or even low-level production companies rather than aiming for the high-end studio stuff? I had some thoughts about that, which was basically, you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills and get by, and let's see where this goes over the next year or two, because I think that once all the instability and uncertainty settles out, we hope, in the next year to possibly 2 years, things might sort of kind of return to some level of normal. Although it's going to be a new normal, I'm pretty sure of that. But time is going to tell on this, and we'll see where this goes. But again, it was a great conversation. If you guys happen to catch this and see me, find me on Facebook. I would love to do a webcam chat. My bad for not getting your information. But of course, the great ideas always come 10 minutes after the opportunity was looking at you. Anyway, there was a lot of conversation at Cinegear around what are we doing, where are we going, where is this industry going? People who worked in those studios in Hollywood, who worked on TV shows, movies, they would sit there and say on an average given year, there's something like 90 TV shows in production. And, that's sitcoms, movies, different things. And they're all like, we maybe have half that work going on, maybe. And that's kind of a pickup from where it was before. And everybody is just very baffled and frustrated. Obviously, people have left the industry. The lucky ones, if they had a good retirement fund, probably retired out a little bit sooner than they thought they would. There are people who have simply gone into driving Uber and Lyft, which is kind of rough. And there's people like a friend of mine who became an electrician, and I don't mean the film business kind. I mean a commercial residential electrician doing electrical work, and he's happy. You know, he's got regular work, good money, and hours are probably a little bit saner, and everything is good. So it's a very strange time, and I think that we all need to do some questioning as to how much we truly want to be in this industry. The UCLA kids that were talking to me said, well, you know what, some of the advice they've gotten consistently was, well, you just have to be 100% committed, rah, 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 focused, say no to everything else, be a laser beam, focus on what you want to do, and just go. Well, the reality is a lot of those jobs don't exist anymore, and they're not coming back. And for people who want to give that advice, they are probably already successful. They've probably got multiple decades of success in the industry, and they're coming at it from a very, very different perspective. They have a house, they have money in a bank, they have a retirement, they have a fund that lets them get through the slow times and go, yeah, whatever, no problem. The next job is coming up in 3 months. Those people giving this advice, I don't think are being truly in tune and aware with how things are changing right now. And I can certainly say out of my own personal work, Zoom, for example, has taken a lot of work away from me. Why? Well, why should we send a TV crew out to shoot something when we can put it on Zoom? And you see that a dozen times an hour on news. And now I actually saw a pitch reel for a documentary that, you know, whether they do streaming or however they distribute it doesn't matter. But their pitch was Zoom interviews. The entire doc shot on Zoom interviews, with the exception of maybe one or two important people who couldn't figure Zoom out. You know, that's serious food for thought there. I don't think this is doom and gloom. I think this is going to be a case of reinventing yourself, being honest about what you really want to do and what your situation is, your skills, your opportunities or lack of opportunities, and the resources that you do or don't have available. How bad do you really want this? And is there another career that you could go into? A lot of folks have said, well, content may go to the small screen, it may go to YouTube. But for those of you who have tried to monetize YouTube, wow. You know, once upon a time, it used to buy groceries for the month. That was when I first started. And I actually had far fewer viewers and subscribers back then. Now, you know, maybe it might buy me a coffee and a pastry in the local coffee shop. I mean, it's pathetic. And so YouTube really needs to change the economy of this because they're making a ton of money and they need to share it more fairly with all the creators that are out there. Trade shows, are we done with them? There was a lot of interesting conversation that I'm not necessarily privy to publicly repeat or disclose, but I think that next year's NAB, you may be surprised to see a few names not showing up there. And that's because it's a mismatch of the audiences. In other words, what the vendors are selling isn't necessarily a good match for the people who are showing up. And I think that's been a struggle for NAB forever. I mean, are any of us interested in TV transmitters or towers or tower bulbs or service, or it's even just some of that nuts and bolts infrastructure that makes a TV station work, even as it transitions into a more IT-based setup? Not really. And the production gear stuff has always been okay, but it's been shrinking. And so we kind of look at what's left, which is the software side. It's kind of like, you could just split these three up into their own shows. And that's what kind of Cinegear is about. If you took NAB's production area, the stuff with the lights, the cameras, the lenses, all the things that you need to go out and produce content, that middle hall, central hall, would kind of be Cinegear, but on a little bit smaller and a little bit more low-key setup. And the great thing is there is a certain amount of people who come to Cinegear who don't come to NAB. So those are my thoughts coming out of Cinegear this year. It's been a very interesting show. I'm still positive, I'm still hopeful, but we're still going to have some fortitude to stick things through until we see the economy of production and content creation start to come back around so that this again becomes a viable way to make a living. All right, see you guys next time. And the Arles Prime thing I'm working on, I'm shooting, I'm doing a trip next week to specifically shoot that content, so we're getting there.